I don't actually know if I've ever given any real indication of how old I am on this YouTube channel, and maybe guess right now, but I'm 26 years old. So I am in the like young adult category, demographic, age group. And I think that the young adult stage of life, especially the like post-college young adult, young professional stage of life, is possibly the one that has the most unaddressed ache and the most unaddressed issues. The most issues that don't have any direction. Like this is the period of time where maybe you find yourself floating the most. Because I think that throughout our upbringing, we are just given this sense of like everything is set up for us. Like when you're a super little baby, parents take care of you. Then you go off to school, and for all of your school years, there's like some sort of direction, some sort of purpose. You're around people your same age, and everything just kind of makes sense. And then once you get out of school, you're kind of just off floating. And often, I mean, I know that I thought that this would be like the most wonderful season of my life, like being a young adult. But there's some like real aches and struggles that come with young adulthood. So I want to talk in this video about the three that I've identified most, the three aches of young adulthood. And I want to talk about them specifically like in this period of time, post-school, post-grad, especially like post-school, pre-entering into your vocation, entering into marriage or priesthood or whatever it is, especially for people like lay people who are just like pre-marriage, post-school. What do you do? Then there's probably three things that are the greatest aches that are experienced by young adults. And I've experienced all of them. So I just want to talk about them and hopefully remedy them. And they are these. Number one is I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Number two is, I feel like what I'm doing doesn't really matter. And number three is I feel like I'm doing it alone. Any of those feel like something you're feeling if you're in this stage of life right now? I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't know if what I'm doing really matters. And I feel like I'm doing it alone. This sense of like I'm floating and I don't really know where I'm going. This sense of like, is what I'm doing what I really want to do? Like it's making a difference. There's some kind of like meaning to it, some purpose. And is there anyone with me? Or am I just running this race by myself? I want to talk about those three things. I want to talk about them in the context of like, if those things are missing, we lack a real sense of meaning in life. Because I came across this article a few years back about psychologists doing some trying to define man's search for meaning and trying to define how would we, and I've made a video on this channel before about this in the past, but they put three terms to signify like what are the three things that help us to gain some sense of meaning in our life. And it comes down to these three things: coherence, purpose, and significance. And those things basically are, coherence is like I have a direction, I know where I'm going. Everything in my life is making sense because it was going from point A to point B. I can tell where I'm going. Purpose is like I'm making a difference. I'm making an impact. What I'm doing is, positively benefiting the community. And three is significance is I'm significant to other people. I have a community. I matter to other people, and I'm not just by myself. So those three things, those things that coherence, purpose, and significance, the things that define meaning, are basically those three things that are missing in those three aches of young adulthood. Like a lack of coherence is to say, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. That's a lack of coherence. A lack of purpose would be to say, is what I'm doing really matter? Does what I do really matter? It's a lack of purpose. And lack of significance is to say, I feel like I'm doing it alone. Do I even matter to anyone else? And if we're missing those three things, we feel like we're lacking meaning. So how do we remedy those three things? If I feel like I'm lacking coherence, lacking purpose, or lacking significance, I don't know what I'm doing in my life, feel like what I'm doing doesn't matter, or feel like I'm doing it alone? So let's start with the first one, coherence. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I feel like I'm floating. I feel like I'm directionless. I don't really know where I'm going, what I'm doing. I think maybe this is like the easiest one to feel is missing post school, because like we said, throughout school, there's always a next step. Like when you're done with kindergarten, you go to first grade. After first grade, you go to second grade to third grade, all the way up through high school. And then there's like college is another option. But once you're done with school, it's like, okay, you get a job. And then what? There's not really like the built-in next step of like, where am I going? What am I doing? And maybe finally you got this job. It's like, okay, yeah, this job's kind of cool, but like, I just float along day to day. I go to my 9 to 5, I come home and then what? So to implement, I'm going to talk about practical things for each of these. To implement some sense of like coherence of like, where am I going? What am I doing with my life? To implement some kind of goal or project to work on, like on day to day. And this could be something really small, but something goal oriented, something that I can begin and end and move towards. So give me some sense of direction. Like even if it's a small thing, but it's something that like on the day to day gives me some sense of movement towards some end goal. Because always in school you had projects to work on, and maybe in work you have a little bit of a sense of that. But if you feel like you're lacking it, then develop some kind of project. I've made videos about this before too, about maybe it's something creative, maybe it's something active, maybe it's whatever it is, something that allows you to go from point A to point B, to work on it every day or every few days, just like make progress. Progress gives me a sense of like coherence. I'm moving in a direction. Okay, so if you feel like you're lacking, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, maybe a small practical is come with a project, something that you get excited about working on as well. So that's number one. Number two, to feel like I'm lacking purpose. I feel like maybe this is just like one of the big lies in the question is like, is what I'm doing really meaningful? Does what I do really matter to people? And maybe the tone of that sounds something like I feel like I'm no good. Like I feel like I make no impact. I have no real special giftings. I have no particular passions. Like I see some people like online, because we live in a social media world where it's very easy to compare with people who like they clearly know what they're doing and they're making a real difference with their gifts. And I feel like is what I'm doing really that important? Like I feel like I am very lucky that I work a job that I love to do and gives me a great sense of purpose. It like uses my gifts very well and I get really excited about it. I'm passionate about it. So I love my work. But work, like in just basically like what is the dignity of work at a very basic level? It's just, something to pay the bill, something to provide for my well-being. So a lot of people don't work a job that like really lights them up and gives them a sense of like passion and excitement and purpose for it. And that's okay. But if we're lacking that sense of purpose, then what do? Because maybe it often feels like, well, what the heck am I really doing with my life? Am I really making any kind of impact? Am I just no good? No, you're not. And yes, you do have special gifting. So what I would say is the practical thing is to cultivate those gifts or abilities. Maybe just pick one. Like pick one thing. And whether it has to do with like your work, or maybe if you like double them up, it has to do with this project that you're working on. But come up with some kind of gift or ability, charism, idea that you have that you're passionate about, and develop it and cultivate it. And better yet, cultivate a gift that can be used for the benefit of other people. So that you can say, one, I know that I do have special gifts, and two, that what I'm doing does matter because it's benefiting other people. So if you feel like the second one, purpose, if you feel like I'm just no good, what I'm doing doesn't really matter, then cultivate a gift and like grow a skill to benefit other people. So it's coherence, purpose, significance. And this is probably the hardest one if it's felt, where like I feel like I'm doing this alone. And again, this is probably a super easy one to experience because throughout all of our upbringing, like school-wise, you are always placed in an environment where you are around people of your same age, doing the same thing as you, living in the same area as you, and you see them every single day. It's forced. It's part of the day-to-day. And unless you, after school, work some job where like you're around people who are in a similar stage of life as you, or you like left school with a very close, like clear group of friends that all happen to stay in the same area, which is usually the thing. It's like maybe you have friends, but maybe they all moved, or maybe they're on different stages of life, and now you feel like you're the only one doing the thing you're doing and you're alone. And the reality of this one is just like, we need friendships and we need community. So if it's lacking, the only remedy for this is to make friends. And this is the point in life, like young adulthood might actually be the hardest time to make friends because like no one knows what they're doing. Because here's the thing, if you feel like you don't have friends, you feel like you're alone, so does a person down the street who's in like their young adult years, same as you. But everyone's intimidated to make the first step because they're like, I must be the only one. I must be the only one who's alone right now. So I don't want to be vulnerable to reach out to other people to say that I'm alone because they probably have good community. Odds are, truth is, they probably don't. And no one really cares if like you reach out and like, yo, I just need some friends right now. I'd be like, dope. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be afraid of about that. And the reality is that you need to take the initiative because what required not much effort before in forming friendships because you were just around people, same interests, same age, all of your life, now requires a lot more intentionality to grow, to keep, and to find friendships in young adulthood. It takes a lot of intentional effort. So find young adult groups, find places, whether it's a local church, whether it's the gym, whether it's, social media now, like find a Facebook group of something that you're interested in and just like go and get out of your comfort zone and find people, then be intentional to follow up with them, spend time with them to cultivate a deep friendship with other people. And that's the only way to remedy this feeling of like, I'm alone, is to go and meet some people and go and form friendships because it's not good for man to be alone. So those are the three aches: the coherence, the purpose, and the significance or the lack thereof, and remedies of if I feel like I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, to have some kind of project or goal. If I feel like what I'm doing doesn't really matter, then to cultivate a gift or an ability or a skill to benefit other people. If I feel like I'm doing it alone, then the reality is you just need to go out and find people because they're there. You're not the only one who's alone. So those are three very small but practical things to do to help to alleviate some of these aches. But of course, even these things may help a little bit. But deeper than this, how do we satisfy the ache that is felt in this lack of meaning in young adulthood? Of course, the answer here is that the Church of Jesus Christ provides the satisfaction of all of these aches in and of itself. And the story of the gospel, like the answer to the meaning of life, is just written into the story. Like if I feel like I'm lacking a sense of coherence, I'm lacking direction, like what am I doing with my life? Like we find ourselves in the greater story. Like we find ourselves, Jesus came for us and died for us and has sent us out on mission. Like we are given such incredible sense of direction. Our whole life, it fits into this larger story. We have this sense of purpose because God has created us and he has died for us. And then he invites us, like the disciples, to go and make disciples of all nations. Like he gives us a purpose, a reason for existing. And like even before that, just the general dignity of the human person, in that God created us. The fact that you exist is a sheer act of goodness and love from God the Father. And then like significance, if I feel like I'm alone, the answer is that I am never alone. It is not good for man to be alone. And God has created us to be in community, and not only to give us community, but to give us himself in communion. Like the entirety of the story of Christianity give us answers and satisfaction to the ache of the human person. And not just kind of in a general theoretical sense, but lastly, in a sacramental and real sense, the the church provides answers and satisfactions to these three aches. So, number one, coherence. If I feel like I don't know what I'm doing with my life or like what's going on in my life or how my life goes from point A to point B, then like there are sacraments in the church, the sacraments of initiation that are like baptism. You were claimed by God from whenever you were baptized, you were claimed as his son or daughter. And then confirmation is the sealing and strengthening of that baptism and a sending for the rest of your life. That gives you some sort of direction. So sacramentally, the sacraments of initiation, confirmation and baptism, and sort of the Eucharist as well, like institutes us in a family where we are sent with a clear purpose and reason for why we exist. And then purpose, like, is what I'm doing, does what I do really matter? Then God gives us these sacraments of vocation, where like eventually you're going to end up in a place where you are called to love and to give yourself away. What begins in confirmation and this outpouring of the Holy Spirit is now fulfilled and like primarily fulfilled in your vocation to holiness, to come to know God and to love him, but also to go and make disciples of all nations, to evangelize, and then to live out your vocation, to pour yourself out in love to your husband or your wife or your kids, or to the church as a priest or a religious. So there's like great purpose that's written into this. And then finally, significance of how we become not only significant to one another, but to God is in the Eucharist, is where Jesus gives himself fully to us, his body, blood, soul, and divinity, where we come into communion with the God of the universe and with the mystical body of Jesus Christ. Like every time we go to Mass and receive the Eucharist, we become one with the entire church of Jesus Christ. So we are significant. Whether we feel it or not, we're significant to God, who comes to give us his body and blood, gives us his whole self, to unite himself to us, and he unites us to one another in Holy Communion. So the church has great answers for this. So the reality is like, yeah, these aches are so felt, and I have felt them, and I still do all the time. But like, there is an answer for the ache of young adulthood. So hopefully this is just kind of practical advice to get through it and to keep going on the journey until we feel a real and true sense of satisfaction and meaning, ultimately in Jesus Christ. But for now, hopefully those practical steps help a little bit.